As for the War of 1812, it was a curious war, declared by the young United States, based on two basic frustrations with Great Britain and one perhaps slightly overreaching desire for territorial acquisition. The latter part had to do with the fact that from Jefferson on, the young United States had wanted to acquire Lower Canada. And so part of the impetus here was to do that. The two frustrations were indeed, had to do with free trade, because Great Britain had declared the Orders of Council which required neutral shipping to pass through an English port en route to Napoleonic Europe and be charged an extra tariff in the process. And the other frustration, of course, was impressment, stopping American vessels on the open ocean, going aboard and saying, "You look Irish, you look English, you belong to us," and taking sailors off of those vessels. Those two irritations became the driving force of declaring war. Ironically, war was declared on the 18th of June, 1812, just at the time when new authorities in England were about to rescind the Orders of Council, which they did on the 25th of June, but too late. Because on the 23rd of June, Commodore John Rogers, on the USS President, had engaged the HMS Belvedere south of New London, Connecticut. She was there looking for the French privateer, the Marengo, and shots were fired, and the war was on, and there was no turning back. During the early months of the war, we Americans had some impressive naval victories at the hands of the USS Constitution in particular. However, as time evolved a little bit, Great Britain felt more control over Napoleon and increased its blockade of American ports, perhaps most significantly trapping Stephen Decatur in New London with the United States, the captured Macedonian, and the Hornet. And he was not able to get out through the rest of the war. You're going to hear a little bit about that in here. It turned out that our most effective weapon were the privateers that we sent to sea, of which some 526 were active during the war, capturing millions of dollars worth of value in shipping. Of course, there were privateers coming out of here as well, and England was not slow to follow suit with giving letters of marque to vessels to go off and attack American vessels. However, in bearing to this story, the roll-up of interest here, upon which Benjamin Franklin Palmer goes to sea, had captured 2 ships, 2 brigs, and 2 schooners worth $2 million before she was captured. It makes sense that young American men would have wanted to get involved in that particular activity. Why B.F. Palmer took a year and a half to do so, we don't know. But what follows are his diary entries from another 18 months of frustrated incarceration after having been captured on the second day out of leaving Newport, Rhode Island, on the roll-up. A few characters that you might need a little information about that will be involved here. Thomas Mott was another prisoner of war, a New Yorker, who was both in Melville Prison and in Dartmoor, who wrote a slew of poems, many of which were turned into song, one of which is in this presentation, and one of which he published after the war. So certainly the two of them probably knew each other in Dartmoor Prison. Captain Fellows was the captain of the Rolla, and you'll hear his name a few times. Thomas Hardy was the Thomas Hardy of Trafalgar, in whose arms Nelson died, and who said at that point, "Kiss me, Hardy." Thomas Hardy was in charge of the fleet along this part of the upper part of the U.S. coast in that blockade, and he ended up bombarding Stonington, Connecticut in August of 1814. there are some references to that here. Mr. Mitchell was an agent from Philadelphia who came to Halifax, was sent here to be the agent for the American prisoners at Melville Prison. Old Cutchett was master of the Ardent, one of the first vessel that Palmer is a captive on. And later he ends up in Halifax. You'll hear his name. He becomes one of the people dealing with the prisoners at Melville Prison. Mr. Sutherland was a Halifaxer, local man here, who employed Benjamin Franklin Palmer in writing and doing various things. So he's part of an arrangement here where American prisoners of war could actually work for local business folks and such, which was a great blessing, by the way. On the other hand, Reuben Beasley in England was the agent for the Americans there, but he was not American, he was English, and he was in control of the monies coming to them in Dartmoor Prison, and he was in charge of getting them out of Dartmoor Prison at the end of the war. You'll hear something more about him. Not such a pleasing character. And finally, yellow clothes. When these prisoners ended up getting to Dartmoor Prison in England, they were dressed in a kind of a yellow canvas outfit. You'll hear that mentioned. It would be confusing otherwise. So, as we get into this, listen to Palmer's language. It is, of course, archaic. This is a half a gill. A gill is 4 ounces, and you're going to hear a lot about food being served out in gills. And other things like a mess, of course, is dinner or a meal being eaten by a group of particularly maritime folks or military folks. Fishing the boom. You can wrap an injured spar, wrap it up with line and such, and try to repair it to the point where you can use it again. And that's part of his story. So there are some archaic terms in here, but also his language gets somewhat graphic along the way. And just be prepared for that. So, among other things, Benjamin Franklin Palmer ends his long diary that he writes, and how he was able to write a diary through all of this is also a question. How could he actually be writing all of this down without officials saying, what is it that you're doing with that? Hey, where did he get the paper? All of those questions ensue, and you think about that. But also he ends his diary with a number of pages of poetry, one poem of which is noted to be sung to a particular tune. So that I do in here. But it also made me think that he must have been a singer himself, that he was interested in song. And so I've incorporated various pieces, a couple of songs of the period into this, and some of Thomas Mott's work. So those are the songs that you'll hear pieced into this as we go along. And it seemed to me that a song written by Samuel Woodworth at the very beginning of the war, as a booster song to the Americans, might have been one of the things that urged him, Benjamin Franklin Palmer, to go ahead and get out on a privateer and do his thing. So out of that comes this song called The Patriotic Diggers. Enemies beware, keep a proper distance, else we'll make you stare at our firm resistance. Let alone the lads who are freedom tasting. Don't forget our dads gave you once a basting to protect our rights from your flint and triggers. See on yonder heights our patriotic diggers, men of every age, color, rank, profession, ardently engaged, labor in succession. Pickaxe, shovel, spade, crowbar, hoe, and barrow, better not invade, Yankees have the marrow. Scholars leave their schools with patriotic teachers, farmers seize their tools, headed by by their preachers, how they break the soil, brewers, butchers, bakers, here the doctors toil, there the undertakers, bright Apollo's sons, leave their pipe and tabor, mid the roar of guns, join in martial labor, cross the embattled plain, in sweet concord rally, and in freedom's name, sing the foe's finale. Pick, axe, shovel, spade, crowbar, hoe, and barrow, better not invade, Yankees have the marrow, better not invade. Don't forget the spirit which our dads displayed and their sons inherit. If you still advance, friendly caution spiting, you may get by chance a belly full of fighting. Plumbers, founders, dyers, tinmen, turners, shavers, sweepers, clerks, and criers, jewelers and engravers, clothiers, drapers, players, cartmen, hatters, tailors, gaugers, sealers, weighers, carpenters, and sailors. Pick, axe, shovel, spade, crowbar, hoe, and barrow, better not invade, Yankees have the marrow. And so to the words of Benjamin Franklin Palmer. December 6th. Left Stonington at 11 o'clock at night with Captain Fellows and Mr. Bailey. Got to Wickety Walk. Set sail again and at daylight hove to under Davis's Tavern. December 7th. After taking a good stock of provision, we again set sail and about 12 o'clock arrived at Newport Ferry. Crossed the ferry in company with Mr. Shaw and Burroughs, took dinner at Mr. Dawes' Tavern, and then went aboard the privateer Rover. Not much pleased with her, she being small, came ashore. December 9th, went to the office and shipped. Put my things on board, expecting to sail. Had I not gone so far, I believe I should return home. I dislike this privateer very much. December 10th, 4 p.m. all hands on board, got underway. Passed the fort about sunset, received 2 shots from the fort, wished they'd sunk her. Passed the Port Judith about 8 o'clock, and 12 midnight passed 2 men of war. They gave chase. We sprung our main boom, but escaped and had some talk of going back to New Bedford, but finally concluded we could fish the boom in the morning. December 11th. This morning at daylight, discovered 2 sail to leeward. She appeared to be a merchantman, but we did not apprehend much danger. But then we soon found her to be a frigate. She commenced a heavy cannonade which proved very destructive to our rigging and spars. We still gained upon her until after firing 190 shot, one struck our foremast, which soon came by the board. We were soon boarded, and then it was into the boat, you damn Yankee rascals, and on board the Loire frigate with it. They overhauled our bags and plundered them of everything valuable. Then we were ordered below, except for captain and lieutenants. Negroes and sailors, fiddlers and tailors, 8 deep in the hold. Oh God, what reflections on this sad night. December 13th, saw 2 sails standing for us. Soon discovered them to be, by signals, to be the San Domingo 74 and the Ardent 64. Boat came on board and ordered us on the 64. We mustered our bags and went something dissatisfied. They put us down in the lower hold except for Captain Fellows, brother, and Mr. Latham. Worser and worse, and more of it. December 24th. Our fare consists of 3/4 pound of bread, 1 gill of peas, 6 ounces of meat. But time flies apace, playing cards and checkers and etc. We live something in style as they have fitted up the ship's some. Christmas Eve, and nothing to drink. December 25th. It being Christmas, we are allowed some fresh beef. But what kind of beef? They look like some of Pharaoh's lean kind.
But as bad as they are, we're very glad to get them. Ship's company last night were as drunk as Bacchus, kept up a hell of blue, all night quarreling and drinking. We had nothing to carry on the glory. By now, and I'll be doing some asides through this, by now they're in Bermuda. January 1st, New Year's. It is an old saying with the women in Connecticut that if a person is lively and doing well, he may calculate to do well all year through. I think our prospect is bad. Sweet America, when will thy happy time be come when we shall inhale thy pure air of liberty and be blessed with the charming society of the fair sex? Farewell to America, thy white cliffs adieu. Can the gale be auspicious that bears me from you? The waving oceans divide us as wide as the pole. No distance can change the true love of my soul. As well might my messmates determine to bail all the water that fills up old Neptune's great pail, as divert my firm mind from its fond thoughts of you. Farewell to America, sweet Mary, adieu. January 8th. Gaming on board progresses, but having no money, I have no hand in it. Even if I had, I don't have much propensity that way. Our hopes of a cartel, soon fitting out, seem to vanish. I believe the officers sometimes gives us hope that we may feel the disappointment more sensibly. 19th. The prisoners I mentioned a few days since have an opportunity and are permitted to embark for the States. I avail myself of this chance to write some letters. 23rd. Nothing but discontentment reigns among the prisoners, fearing that we may have to stay here during the summer. If that should be the case, I think a cargo of coffins should pay a good price, for it is my opinion that most of us will make our exit and retire behind the scene of this world and become actors on the stage of death. 25th. This is what the English call Bang-Yan Day, and well they might. Only 1 gill of peas, cocoa, and a quarter pound of condemned bread for breakfast, half a pint of peas and same quantity of bread for dinner, and for supper a quarter pound of bread and as much water as you can drink. 29th. When the bell announces 12 o'clock, the cooks repair to the galley. Again, down comes dinner, which consists of 3 gills of peas, half boiled, half a pound of beef, half bone, and a biscuit is half worms. We look with scorn on our homely fare, and in silence sit down and soon devour our scanty allowance. And then cards are introduced and kept up until 8 o'clock, when the lights are ordered out, and then we turn in and talk about home, sing a few songs, and then in the arms of Morpheus pass the nights. Dear Mary, do can such love go to wreck, when every plank bears thy dear name on the deck? As many a true love's knots in the tops I have tied, while guileless with checkers my messmates have plied. Their sports and their pastimes no pleasure to me. My mind is more happy when sighing for thee, is more happy by far when I'm thinking of you. Farewell to America, dear Mary, adieu. February 12th. The storm begins to burst upon us, and we think some of our rights are infringed upon water being denied us by the officer of the deck. It raining very hard, the water from off the poop is put in the tank for us to drink. Cannot drink it. Too bad. The fowls being kept on the poop make it very disagreeable. a quantity of filth which proceeds from them being intermixed with water. And the tarpaulin from the hogsty is taken to catch the water in, and then put into the tank for us to drink. 15th, saw 2 boats coming crowded with prisoners. Soon discerned them to be French. Now look out for lice. You may guess that we stole close, there being about 800 souls on the lower deck of the 64. But we should stay here during the summer. We should get thinned off. Old Jimmy will come and set his net for some of us. March 17th. A trial by the prisoners' courts. And I should explain that the prisoners on board these vessels created their own court. They elected a judge and jury, and they would try any of their own for any infractions. So, one Williams is found guilty, given 3 dozen stripes on the bare back with the cat o' nine tails. March 18th. Another report that says that the true supporters of our country, as they say, feds. Keep in mind this is an American, talking about other Americans. As they say, feds, has let a little of their patriotism out of the bag. These, Commodore Decatur was going to take an attempt to get out of New London when some of these fellows shed a blue light from Groton Long Point. This being discovered by Decatur, he thought it more prudent to remain where he was and, if possible, discover these damned traitors. But all attempts prove unsuccessful. This brings New London patriotism to its true light. March 19th, they say the Ramillies is going to Halifax. April 13th, today news came when one of the prisoners in the hospital had departed this life. Diseases are getting more prevalent throughout the ship, and I very much fear that if we should stay here through the summer, the majority of us will lose the number of our mess. April 14th, huzzah for Halifax. This morning orders came for 200 to get ready to go on board the transport and 150 to go on board the Ramillies. This is pleasing news, although we can't judge whether it will be for the best or not. April 15th. We are to embark this afternoon and leave this floating hell that has held us in bondage for 4 months. And now in 4 months more, I hope to be home. Farewell, old Ardent. Goodbye, old hell. I have weathered thee. 16th, we board the Ramillies, and being mustered, the officers were put in the gunroom and the sailors in the forehold. We, having plenty of grog, turned to and had a noble blowout. April 20th, this morning, Sir Thomas sent for me and had some general conversation on different subjects. That's all that Palmer says. Palmer is from Stonington. 4 months later, Hardy is going to bombard Stonington. I'm very curious to know. April 30th. Stood in for Sambro Light, wind increasing and being fair, we soon run up and come to anchor opposite the town. May 2nd. This day we embarked for hell. We were all boated and soon landed up at the upper end of town. Captain of the Marines then formed us into hollow squares and marched us off quick step. Prisoners seeming to wish to get to prison. Our hopes being so much raised by the idea of getting exchanged soon. We had to march about 3 miles. When we saw the gloomy walls of our new habitation, but guess our disappointments, and the various feelings which was passing through our minds as we discovered the prison yard to be crowded with unfortunate sufferers. Our hopes were all blasted at once, and nothing but The idea of years of imprisonment seemed to occupy our minds. To look around, we could see nothing but long faces and gloomy countenances. We remained at the gates for some time in the rain, waiting in anxious expectation of entering through like a sinner waiting in the gates of hell. As we went through, each one that wanted got a hammock, and away we trudged along with downcast eyes and heavy hearts, fearing we should not pass the threshold of this gate again very soon. May 10th, dinner being over and the dishes cleaned, everyone employed his mind about something, some mending old clothes, some playing cards, some cribbage, some backgammon, some checkers, some at pick-a-massoo, and others making news. At length, someone cries out, "Mr. Mitchell is coming." I asked the old gentleman for some shirts and shoes, being robbed at the time of my capture of nearly all my clothes. He said as soon as he could procure them, he should supply all those who were in need. May 15th. Evening passes away in telling stories and singing songs. I would imagine that one of the songs they might have sung would be this one, which would be a wonderful one to poke the guards. Come, jolly lads, ye hearts of gold, fill your cans and glasses, defund the order of the day, a health to all our lasses. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. You can sing that part, it's okay. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. As hot as British folks can sup, we'll give it to them handy. The Constitution long shall be the glory of our Navy. When she battles with a foe, she sends them to old Davy. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. We'll let the British know that we at fighting are quite handy. Not long ago, 5 British ships unto her gave a chase, sir. Spite of all the quips and pranks, she beat them in the race, sir. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Though 10-1, the Yankee boys at fighting were quite handy. At length the British ship Guerriere quite proudly came across her. Dacre said in half an hour in air he'd surely toss her. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. He counted chickens ere they hatched because the eggs were handy. But soon, alas, poor Dacre's found he was quite mistaken. Thought he got himself well off by saving of his bacon. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. The Yankee boys at fighting fun are always quick and handy. And then begun the bloody fray, the balls flew thick and hot, sir. In half an hour the job was done, the Guerriere went to pot, sir. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. The British didn't like the fun, quit soon as 'twas handy. So here's a health to Captain Hull, all his noble crew, sirs. Should he wish to fight again, his lads will see him through, sirs. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. At riddling British ships, I'm sure brave Hull is quite the dandy. May 24th. Mr. Mitchell is seen coming over the hill. He soon arrives and, taking his seat, waits until silence prevails. At length, someone asks the old gentleman what the news is. The exchange, mentioned sometime since in the papers at Halifax, extends only to the land forces of Canada. They are to be exchanged immediately, but for us poor privateers, no exchange. May 28th. The papers mention of 2 men taken up in New London on suspicion of being concerned in supplying the enemy with provision and news. I hope they will hang them. Another bright act of New London patriotism. June 4th. 4 prisoners carried to Target Hill this morning. a place where they bury the dead. I'm fearful a number of us will visit this place this summer, if not shortly released. June 25th. The heavens wear a gloomy aspect. Nothing but vexatious disappointments seem to offer itself to the unfortunate prisoner. I almost seem to wish my dissolution to come. Day after day passes slowly on, and nothing offers to animate our drooping spirits. Worn out with afflictions, confined within the dark walls of a prison with sickness and want presenting itself in every shape, day after day rolls on, successively, and nothing like liberty appears. Hope, alas, hope has vanished. But a few days later, July 4th, glorious and ever memorable day, a miserable place this to celebrate the anniversary of American independence, but we did the best we could toward it. Had a pennant strung from one room to the other. In the middle of the room had a piece of cloth suspended on which we had painted all of our naval victories displayed, over which was an emblem of liberty standing over the lion with a spear in her hand in the act of piercing it through the lion's head, which was completed by the American standard of arms, handsomely drawn. We kept up the day in dancing and drinking water, for rum we could get none. Now, we had no oration for our situation being such as would not permit us to rejoice so much as we should if we had our liberty. But I suspect they sang some songs. And from Thomas Mott comes this, which would have been very appropriate at that moment. You Parliament of England, you Lords and Commons too, consider well what you're about and what you aim to do. You're now at war with Yankees, I'm sure you'll rue the day you rouse those sons of liberty in North America. You first restricted our commerce and say our ships shan't trade. You next impressed our seamen and used them as your slaves. You then insulted Rogers while sailing on the Main, and had we not declared this war, you'd done it all again. You thought our frigates were but few, and Yankees could not fight, until brave Hull your barrier took and vanished from your sight. Our Wasp then took your frolic, you nothing said to that. Your proctors being of the line, of course she took her back. But then your Macedonian, no finer ship could swim. Decatur took her gilt work off, and then he sent her in. Your Java by a Yankee ship was sunk, you all do know. Your Peacock fine in all her pride, by Lawrence down did go. Then you sent your Boxer to beat us all about, but we'd an enterprising brig that beat your Boxer out. She boxed her into Portland, moored her off the town, to show those sons of liberty that Boxer of renown. And then upon Lake Erie, brave Perry had some fun. You own he beat your British fleet and caused them for to run. He beat them fair and squarely, the like not seen before. A British squadron beat complete, some sunk, some run on shore. So make every endeavor to try to make a peace, for Yankee ships are building fast their navy to increase. They will defend their commerce, thereby those rights by heaven were shown, that Yankee ships in time of peace to any port might roam. So lament you sons of England, for distant is the day you'll e'er regain by British force your lost America. Go tell your king in Parliament, by all the world is known, that British force on sea and land by Yankees is o'erthrown. July 9th, a token for England. England, England is the cry all round the yard. Sad destiny this.
Everyone stands in fearful expectation of his name being pronounced next to go to England. The very sound reverberates through every vital of the human body. July 10th, birthday, my boys. Huzzah! Fine place to celebrate your birthday. No money, no rum, no credit, poor and lousy. 12th, taken unwell this morning, violent pain in my head and a high fever. 14th, old Cutchett comes with the books to call out those going home in the cartel. July 22nd, several has been to see the list, and about sundown Captain Fellows comes and tells me that both his name and mine are on that list. Happy moment this, though I do not place much confidence in it. Still could not sleep through the night, fancied 10,000 pleasures. But I must stop. 'Tis now morning. July 23rd. The morning passes in a buzz about who is going and who is not. Afternoon comes, and old Cutchett calls them out to go home. Captain Fellows is called, but I am not. July 26th. Today I received a letter from my too good brother. Oh, how much satisfaction, how much pleasure does a letter from such a brother give to a brother in captivity? How soon did he, on hearing of my confinement, send money for my relief? July 27th. Gave my letters to Mr. Sutherland to carry into town and get some money if possible. I've been employed writing for Mr. Sutherland through the day and dined on roast beef for the first time in 8 months. August 18th. This day, the dreaded day, has at length arrived. The draft commenced this morning, and they, God damn them, called out 300, and tomorrow the rest to be called. Oh, may God, the curse of God and Mahomet and the devil rest upon them. I can only pray that their prisoners will meet with a similar fate. But it is the fortune of war. August 19th. Farewell, Belleville. Never did I think I should leave this accursed prison with a heavy heart, but alas, to go to England. It is too hard, after being transported from one place to another and harassed about as we have been for over 9 months, imprisonment, to go to England. I left my letters to be sent home to inform them of the sufferings of their unfortunate son, but news of a different nature, if possible, wounds my feelings even more than going to England. The destruction of my native village by the enemy of all mankind. It just came to hand by a prisoner direct from there. Oh, could I but hear the safety of my friends, I would go contented. Alas, I fear that all is not well. My mind forebodes some mishap, but I must smother all my feelings on this occasion and muster up all resolution and swear not to be beaten. No, sooner let me die than give up the ship. At length, the expected doom arrives. They call for the rollers. Here we go, boys, with smiling countenances. Never give them the satisfaction to know that it affects our feelings. No, we'll make them think it is a pleasure rather than a pain. As we stepped into the boat, Mr. Sutherland reached me a jacket and a pair of stockings, reaches me his hand, and wishes me success. At length, we arrive on board the HMS La Hogue 74. We're stowed down in the lower hold, 3 deep altogether. Sleep there is none for us. We already begin to experience the hardships and privations to which we must go through. August 21st. This day they allow 1/2 of us on deck at a time for the purpose of lousing and taking the air. Our allowance consists of a 1/2 pint peas, 1/2 pound of bread, and a 1/4 pound of meat.
Grog is allowed by us, by the captain, which is a valuable acquisition to all. September 8th. One of our crew, a black man, died today, was buried with becoming solemnity. September 15th. Another death this day. This is how they murder. September 19th, 20 days passage from Newfoundland. On the 22nd, made Portsmouth. September 28th, huzzah for Plymouth. The wind being fair this morning. Reports are currently circulating that Dartmoor is to be our abode for God knows how long. October 5th. This day, orders to embark for the prison. The prisoners seemed much rejoiced, as they would, to go home, but no wonder after being penned up in the lower hold of a frigate for a fortnight. We wish to make shift for knowing that we cannot do worse. About 10, we landed at the back part of town. After fronting and facing and wheeling several times, we set off at a fast march. At length, we arrived at the prison completely tired down. I really believe if my salvation depended on it, I could not march 1 mile more. We see nothing but high stone walls and large stone prisons, 7 in number. The list is soon called over, and we enter through the gates and get out that we will get out no more during a number of years. As we pass through, they give us each a hammock and bedding. Our baggage soon arrives, and everyone gets his things, and away we go to bunk. We sleep but little, being almost froze, the prisons being open, our bones aching some. So ends this 5th day of October. And from Thomas Mott comes this description of Dartmoor Prison. Of Dartmoor Prison I'll tell all I can, describe the situation of 10,000 men, their manner of pastime and how they all are, describe this cursed fabric and how we all fare, derry down, 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 derry down. On the top of a mountain this prison does stand, a place picked on purpose for tormenting men, where Frenchmen and Yankees together must stay until this war is over, or else run away, derry down, 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 derry down. Our manner of living is at best very bad, not grub half enough, every countenance sad, not clothing sufficient to cover the skin, and no more indulgence we get from the king, derry down, 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 derry down. Now take all together of what I relate, and say had the author not damned his fate, but he listens with patience and joyfully sings, long life to the president and God damn the king, derry down, 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 derry down, derry down, 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 derry down. November 13th, free trade and sailors' rights. The prison gates are open for the first time since we came to this damn prison, 5 weeks. And we now have an opportunity for seeing and conversing with our friends. November 17th. This day we ought to receive our small but welcome monthly allowance, which is being withheld by Mr. Beasley. November 30th. Commander McDonough's official account of the action and complete victory on Lake Champlain is in this morning's paper. December 2nd. This morning, while we were out, a corpse was carried by. A man that hung himself, jumping off the stanchions with a rope around his neck. He is Captain Taylor's of New York. Thus we see the consequences of despair. December 10th, 1 year to the day since our unfortunate destiny was sealed. December 19th, this evening some prisoners came and requested all of our mess to be present. We soon collected together, a Bible was brought, and an oath administered to us all, that the prisoners of number 5 were digging out and had been 2 weeks at the business. And if anyone should be detected giving the enemy information, it would be certain death. This oath was administered to all. And whoever should be caught, we swear to be his murderer. Should this not be found out, I am in hopes to be clear of this damn prison soon. December 25th, Christmas. Roast geese and pumpkin pies. No, sea pie and plum pudding for us. But we thank God we are able to get so good as we have. And I can see the folks to home now sitting round the table, in a small circle of select friends, the table crowned with all the luxuries that Stonington affords. Now, says they, if we could only just have Frank here, our happiness would be complete. But there is no sweet without the bitter. December 29th, peace with America. Under this head, we have official accounts from Ghent that the preliminaries of peace were signed on the 24th. They have forwarded on to the Cabinet Council, who is acceded to them. They are now wanting nothing but the ratification of the Prince Regent and Mr. Madison to become a permanent treaty. Happy, happy news, and still happier are we when we consider the terms upon which the treaty is made. Honorable to us and disgraceful to them. To the pride of old England, they are now brought where they long since ought to have been. Peace, peace. I cannot write any more today. December 31st. This morning we hoisted our saucy flags. On them displayed free trade and sailors' rights, in large capital letters. It humbles the British pride to see this motto on our flag. Superior, triumphant. This forenoon, some English officers came up to see the prisoners, and the band in number 4 played Yankee Doodle Dandy. Oh, it galls them. January 3rd. A report is in circulation that Congress have removed to Stonington, knowing it will be defended better than at Washington. February 6th. Mr. Adams has been to the hospital to see his brother there. He was in the dead house where 20 dead lay. Nurses informed him that 12 to 20 died every day, smallpox mostly. February 8th. Gentlemen came in and informed me that I had 3 letters, and could I get them by paying the postage? Mr. Phelps offered to go and borrow the money for me, which he did. A friend indeed is a friend in need. The letters were from my brothers Amos and William and C. Nichols. How happy I felt at this moment. I must say that Amos's letter was the most pleasing, as it conveyed the news that I should soon get some money, which I do need very much. William, your letter was highly gratifying, as it contained the particulars of the attack on Stonington. Next comes Mr. Nichols' letter, which was quite unexpected. Never was anything more welcome than all these letters. 3 times 3, o'er and o'er again, have I perused those letters. Of the Battle of Stonington, I would suggest that somewhere along the way, Philip Furneaux's poem must have made it into Dartmoor prison. And that poem was later set to a tune, so we will see it. 3 gallant ships from England came, loaded deep with fire and flame, and other things we need not name, to have a dash at Stonington. Now safe arrived, this ship begun, they thought to make the Yankees run, and have a mighty deal of fun in stealing sheep at Stonington. A Yankee then popped up his head, Parson Jones's sermon read, in which the Reverend Doctor said that they must fight for Stonington. Their ships advancing several ways, the Britons then began to blaze, which put old Williams in a maze for fear of losing Stonington. Their shoot whoops, the Ramillies, then began the attack. The Nimrod made a mighty crack. None could tell what held them back from setting fire to Stonington. Their bombs were thrown, their missiles flew, but not a man of all their crew, though every man stood in full view, could kill a man at Stonington. Their old razzie with red-hot ball soon made a farmer's barracks fall, did a cow-house sadly maul, which stood a mile from Stonington. We Yankees to our fort repaired, and made as though we little cared, for all their shot the very hard, they blazed away at Stonington. They killed a goose, they killed a hen, 3 hogs were wounded in a pen. They dashed away, and pray what then? That was not taking Stonington. Their shells were thrown, their missiles flew, but not a shell of all they threw, though every house stood in full view, could burn a house at Stonington. To have a turn we thought it fair, we Yankees brought 2 guns to bear, and sir, it would have made you stare to see the smoke at Stonington. We drilled the Nimrod through and through, killed and mangled half her crew. When riddled, crippled, she withdrew, and cursed the boys at Stonington. The Ramillies then gave up the fray, with her comrades sneaked away. Such was the valor of that day of British tars in Stonington, and some assert on certain grounds, beside their damage and their wounds, it cost the king £10,000 to have a fling at Stonington. February 19th. One of my messmates has met with quite a misfortune, having kept a louse in the collar of his shirt for 2 or 3 days past to run a race with one of mine. This being the day they were to run for the pot of porter, he off his shirt, but behold, the louse was gone. So he must accordingly be obliged to pay the bet. You heard about lousing before? Lice were a problem. In yellow clothes from head to foot, just like a swarm of bees, from morn to night you'll see a sight, a hunting lice and fleas. They crawl and jump so lovingly, they pass from man to man. If they could speak, you'd hear them say, now catch me if you can. The other morn, when I walked out to take the pleasant air, I saw a louse whose magnitude with horror made me stare. Old Trafalgar, he pinned him fast and killed him for his crime, saying, yesterday was yours, my louse, now the day is mine. Now if you, my friend, see such a louse, I pray don't let him pass. For if you do, I'll tell you true, by God, I'll bite your ass. It's another one of Thomas Mott's. March 11th. Dispatches have been received from New Orleans announcing the total defeats of the British Army by an American forces under General Jackson. March 17th. At length, the most pleasing intelligence of ratification of the treaty has come to hand, and in such shape as to have no doubt of its authenticity. On the receipt of this most glorious news, I and some of my friends had some porter, and the prisoners generally had a festive day. March 18th. We are constantly talking of going home. Captain Shortman, he is the captain of Dartmoor Prison. That Shortman that is sent in word that he had received orders from Mr. Beasley, Reuben Beasley, that agent, that he, Beasley, had all to say in sending us away. The prisoners generally seem dissatisfied at this arrangement, as Beasley will be fitting out some old vessels of his own, which will delay for some time. March 26th, the effigy of Monsieur Beasley is hoisted on a flagstaff this morning. April 6th, prisoners are growing daily more and more discontented. They seem determined to make some bold attempt to escape this damn prison. I did not expect to have any news this coming week, and I believe I should not had not an affair happened. Just at dark, which God knows I shall remember till the day I die. As the subject of this day's disasters may hereafter lead to some controversy, I shall be a little particular in the mentioning of the cause, which gave rise to the horrid murder. A number of prisoners, some of whom, being a little intoxicated, were diverting themselves and the bystanders by heaving turf at each other between the iron railings and the outer wall. The officers, disliking their sports, sent a file of soldiers in and ordered them to disperse, which they did, but coming to the wall, which had been partly dug through the other night, they soon made a hole through. The soldiers gave an alarm that all were coming out. The drum beat was beat to quarters, and the prisoners run toward the gate, where, meeting the soldiers, they were fired upon. And, running into the prison for safety, were seen falling in all directions. The soldiers followed on, firing volley after volley into the doors and windows of all the prisons, killing and wounding, butchering some. And 5 soldiers discharged their muskets upon one man after he was shot. Some that lay wounded on the ground were jumped upon and bayonets plunged into them. Even Shortland, who was drunk, if that's any palliation, stamped upon those who were already dead, Bernoulli. And he who was the sole cause, coward, villain, blood-thirsty rascal, what epithet can be applied to thy sufficiently indicative of thy brutal and savage barbarity? Words can't describe, nor pen depict your inhuman conduct in colors so black as the crime. April 7th. I've not been able to ascertain the names of the killed and wounded, but have, from the best information, the numbers were 7 killed and 38 wounded, most of them mortally. Some more particulars of this horrid murder were just reached me by Jesse Smith, who had a ball through his hat in attempting to assist a wounded man in getting into the prison. He informs me that the man whom the 5 soldiers shot was Washington, one of our crew, who was on his knees, begged for mercy, telling them he was already wounded and was innocent. Kill him, cried Shortland. Well, soldiers immediately discharged their muskets on him and blowed his brains out against the wall. April 8th, I drew up a list of the killed and wounded today, and under the head of British massacre, stuck it on the wall for the gratification of the prisoners. April 15th, Mr. Crockett has been here from Plymouth and informs us that Mr. Beasley's excuse of not being able to get ships is entirely unfounded, and that there are plenty of ships to be had. Thus we have plain demonstration of the neglect of our agents. April 16th, 1815, Sunday, A Prisoner's Meditations. Think not, reader, to hear the prisoner reproach his Maker for his long confinement and hard sufferings. No, it is Beasley alone. From the time that a man becomes a prisoner, he may date his discontent. But as every prisoner has different grievances to complain of, I shall take our particular situation into view. When first captured, ideas of liberty were continually held out to us. Month after month passed on, and no exchange. At length, we were sent to Halifax, where the same ideas being exchanged continued to keep up hope, until, under accumulated evils, we were transported to England. All hope now expired of getting home until a peace should be concluded, which in a few months' time we were happy enough to realize. All our thoughts were now directed toward the time of our liberation, after which ratification we must reasonably expect would not be long, but, alas, how fatally disappointed. It is now nearly 4 months since the signing of the treaty, but no more probability of getting home. I think it's probably about this time that Benjamin Franklin Palmer penned
the poem that he noted to be sung. You sons of Columbia who ne'er plowed the ocean, attention a while and I'll sing you this song concerning the Eagle, American standard, composed by a sailor in prison so long. In Dartmoor prison, we sons of the ocean, I fear are condemned to the horrors of war. But our bright bird, the eagle, is sweeping the ocean, demanding the rights of the American tars. Our eagle at home in the forest sat musing, with eyes ever watchful, discerned from afar. 'Twas old England's notion to drive from the ocean the sons of Columbia, American tars. So when she took flight from the sea coast a-hovering, with eyes full of vengeance and bright as the stars, she says to the heroes commanding the navy, go demand all the rights of the American tars. On the salt briny ocean, our eagle now hovering, commanded by Neptune and assisted by Mars, our brave Constitution with brave resolution commenced all the rights of the American tars. Our banners unfurled on the oceans are flying, Decatur and Hull wear the stripes and the stars. When the battle on Champlain was won by Macdonough, then England acknowledged the American tars. Our peacock and wasp, once attached to the eagle, with mouths full of death, spread their vengeance afar, while the reindeer and Avon are sent to old Davy, must acknowledge the valor of the American tars. But our sailors, impressed in these prisons, are dying. Beat the foe from your coast, drive the enemy far. Our eagle remembers the base imposition you ever established on the American tars. But our bulldogs are loose and loud they are roaring. Destruction and vengeance flies under those stars. So give up these seamen you stole by impressment, and say you have injured the American tars. April 19th, huzzah for home. At length, some of the prisoners are called out to go home. April 20th, this morning the draft started for Plymouth, attended by a strong guard of soldiers. They had a flag with this inscription, Columbia weeps, the 6th of April we remember, which they and the American ensign had flying high when they marched to Plymouth with light hearts and 3 cheers. They bid adieu to the cursed walls of Dartmoor. April 25th. I have just been out and find that a great number of prisoners are buying turns to go home, and I shall endeavor to do the same, and therefore must wind up this day's writing abruptly. April 26th. Another draft was called this afternoon, and I have for once in my life had fortune favor me. It was very difficult to procure a turn, as they were in great demand, but after some length I found a black man by the name of Charles Carroll, who sold me his name for £2. I passed the night in golden dreams of happiness. April 27th. Happy-go-lucky has at length received the smile of fortune. About 8 o'clock a.m. we set sail for Dartmoor,
from Dartmoor Prison, giving 3 cheers which were answered by the prisoners on top of the prison walls. My feelings at this moment can better be judged than described. We marched on quick step until, without halt, until 10 o'clock. While arriving halfway, we met with the relief guard from soldiers from Plymouth. We soon came up with a public house where we got some refreshment and then started on. We embarked for the cartel. All those who had money to spend took a boat and went away to shore. I had about 8 shillings, so I went ashore with Jesse Smith to get some tobacco. We found a large number of prisoners on shore belonging to the other cartels, most of them drunk as Bacchus. I stayed all night. Never did a feather bed taste so sweet to me as on that occasion. April 28th, at 4 this morning, I was looking out for a boat to get on board the cartel, not wishing to be left behind. We had a fair wind, and soon about were alongside, made shift to stow our guests and gear as best as advantage. Mr. Hubbard has appointed our agent, or purser, to see justice done to the prisoners. Our allowance consists of 1 pound of beef, 1 pound of bread, half a pound of potatoes, and 1 gill of peas to each man daily, which is quite sufficient. At 3 p.m. got underway with a fair wind and good breeze, bound for Norfolk, as the captain says, but the prisoners say New York. So we squared away for America. May 12th. I've not been able to write as it's been blowing a gale incessantly from the westward. The conversation is wholly bent upon what port we should go to, some for Boston, others for New York. I'm heartily tired of my messmates, which I find to be a damn pack of hogs. May 18th, it blows quite fresh still ahead. I'm inclined to believe we have some Jonas on board. May 19th, fair wind for the first time in 19 days. May 20th, Mr. Hubbard informs me that the first engagement given by the American ministers at Ghent, Mr. Clay was requested to give a toast. He drank to the brave citizens of Stonington. About this time, the prisoners take over this ship. It is a cartel. It has simply been rented to get them back home, and they are not going to Norfolk. June 8th, this morning made Montauk Light, stood in for it. There ensued another discussion about where they were going, but a couple of smaller boats came alongside and took a number of the men to Newport. We were losing all the tide, and therefore made all possible dispatch, and soon stood in again for Fisher's Island. And once more, I caught sight of my native land. Oh, what sensations occupies my mind at this time after being 18 months in a damn prison. At 8 this evening, we came to anchor in the harbor of New London. And all of us entertained hopes of soon getting feet on liberty, but remained on board during the night. My feelings during the nights can be easier imagined than described. To be within so short a distance of liberty and not enjoy it was quite mortifying. June 9th. This morning at daylight, I was awakened by the oars of a boat, and soon put my clothes on and found the ship's boat with 4 men in it going to town. I jumped in, and away we were, and soon landed in the happy shore of freedom, destitute of money, friends, or clothing. But he soon finds some friends, and he's actually offered a horse, which he declines because, having met with a sloop bound for Stonington, and at 12 o'clock we embarked for home. Having a fair wind, we have soon arrived in Stonington, and I am again landed in my native village, for which blessing I return my sincerest thanks to Almighty God. To attempt to describe my meeting with my friends would be useless an undertaking as the pen of Shakespeare himself would not have be adequate for such a task. Suffice to say that it is the first time in my life I ever shed a tear for joy. From Thomas Moss.
comes this last quatrain. Yes, the hope of return is the joy of a tar. 'Tis his pride, 'tis his compass, his anchor and star. With rapture it causes his affection to burn, and changes adieu to a welcome return. And Frank Palmer concludes, I've now brought my readers to the place of my departure, and shall I, in hopes, leave them enjoying with as much pleasure as I promise.